Hi, everyone. I have a special episode for you today. I'm your host, Stephen Garton, founder of Charity Charge, host of the Charity Charge Show. Today, I am excited to have on Dr. Robin Ganzert, who is the president and CEO of the American Humane Society. Robin, thank you so much for being with us today.
Oh, Stephen, thank you for having me.
Absolutely. It's a pleasure to have you on here. And I'm really excited to talk about your work at the American Humane Society and now also at the Global Humane Society. So, for listeners that may be unfamiliar with your organization, can you give just a brief overview of the mission, the values, and some of the work that American Humane Society has accomplished?
Yes, absolutely. American Humane Society has been around almost 150 years. In fact, next year we celebrate our 150th birthday. So when I think about all of the advancements for the protection of animals for 150 years, they've been promulgated by those who have created this incredible nonprofit and had the forethought to think about our values of compassion, kindness, and love. And we represent those values through the protection of animals. And not just animals, domestic animals, our dogs and cats, horses, but we also protect animals in wild spaces, which we can talk about. Certainly, animals in zoos and aquariums, certainly, animals on film sets, and animals on farms and ranches. So, whenever you think of any animal, American Humane Society has a program to ensure their humane treatment and protection.
I love that. And I want to acknowledge it first and foremost because prior to my work with Charity Charge and now working with thousands of nonprofits and just being in that world,
Mhm.
I was really unfamiliar specifically with how American Humane Society operated and so many other wonderful organizations. And I grew up with dogs and cats. So as a dog and cat lover, that's where always where I felt the main focus of the work. But I love the broader reach of your mission. So can you talk to us a little bit about how the organization was started and how it has this holistic approach of helping all animals?
Absolutely, Stephen. Thank you for asking. It's one of my favorite things is to talk about American Humane Society and Global Humane Society. We were founded coming out of the Civil War in this country, and we were founded when there were a lot of farmers and ranchers shipping their herds and their flocks across country on the railroads trains. Think about the
Wow.
railroad systems were in place, and there wasn't any good treatment of animals. So it was farmers and ranchers who came to American Humane Society and asked us to form a program to actually promote legislation to protect farm animals in transit. So we were actually founded based on farm animal welfare and compassion. So I love that initial story. And as soon as we started to have victories protecting farm animals in transport, we were then moved into the space of child abuse. Believe it or not, back in the 1870s when we were founded, children were equated to animals. They were created as owned property, which is unfathomable in today's times. And it was actually American Humane Society that actually put in protections in place for America's children way back in the day based on our animal cruelty laws, believe it or not. So, from that very precipitous beginning, we then advanced quickly into other areas. It was World War I that founded our rescue program when the Secretary of War back then called my predecessor, Dr. William Stillman, and he said, Dr. Stillman, we need you to go overseas and rescue and care for the war horses. And if you saw Steven Spielberg's beautiful movie War Horse, that's our backstory of our rescue program, which was founded on the battlefields of World War I when those war horses needed care. And it was our teams that went overseas before U.S. boys went overseas serving in World War I to care for the war horses, donkeys, and mules. And the last time they were used in that horrible trench warfare. Then you fast forward and you think about the founding of our service dog program after World War II, when so many service members were coming back after having been on the front lines of World War II. We provided therapy dogs. Then you look at our work to promote the Endangered Species Act and to fight for the protection of the bald eagle. You look at our founding of our farm animal program officially for humane certification, which was started in the year 2000. But let's take you over to the glamour of Hollywood. Believe it or not, it was in 1939 when Henry Fonda picked up the phone and called again Dr. William Stillman, who was still our president and CEO at the time, and he said, "We need to have you in Hollywood." He had just been on a film set where he saw a horse run off the cliff for the sake of making a movie. And Mr. Fonda said that was not his value set at all. We needed American Humane to protect animals on movie sets. So here we are almost 100 years later before we turn around and we're protecting animals still on movie sets, not only in Hollywood, Stephen, but again around the world. So when you take for granted every major protection for animals, they were really promulgated through this incredible organization that I've had the privilege to run for 16, going on 17 years now.
That is just amazing. I'm so glad that you're sharing that and we're able to get the message out to our listeners here.
Mhm.
There's a couple of things that you touched on there that I'm going to explore deeper and want to ask you about.
Mhm.
But one of the things that is so obvious, and just getting to meet you now and chatting with you, is your passion and enthusiasm. So, why are you here? Why are you leading this organization? What was it that really resonated and was in your heart to join as a leader of American Humane Society?
Well, thank you for asking that, because clearly I love what I do. If not, I wouldn't be doing it. I'd be doing something else that I did love. But I feel so blessed to lead the compassion movement and to be the voice for animals. That's actually what gets me up in the morning, is what more can I do to be the voice of animals, not only in our own country, but again around the world, because they need more protections now than ever before. And I actually go back and I enjoy rereading what Dr. William Stillman said almost 100 years ago, and that serves as inspiration. And I'm hoping what I write and say will be inspiration for our leaders of this organization 100 years from now. You know, I joined back in 2010 when American Humane was going through quite a reckoning. It was really an organization that was reimagining where we had come from and where we were going. And it was a time where there was financial crisis. It was a time where they were perhaps had expanded and had too many programs and that had strayed away from their mission. And what called me to this institution, frankly, I'd been working at the Pew Charitable Trust, one of the
Mhm.
world's largest think tanks for philanthropy, and talk about incredible programs around the world. It was such a privilege to work at Pew. And before that, I'd managed and led a philanthropic strategies unit for a large bank where we had thousands of nonprofit clients, and I was there to advise and counsel them on various philanthropic strategies. And so I looked at my career, and it had really been a series of blessings along the way. But there was something very special when I was recruited to lead American Humane. Number one, it was my grandmother's humane organization. I remember Be Kind to Animals when I was in kindergarten. I remember seeing no animals were harmed in the making of this movie. And I thought, boy, I'm being called to this organization. I'm being called to lean into all the lessons I had learned from the Pew, from running that huge division, working for 5,000 nonprofits that were in my book of business at this bank, learning all of that, having a PhD that really concentrated in nonprofit financial management. I thought, this is a time where I'm being called to do this work. And so I jumped in feet first. And I jumped into a really challenging situation almost 17 years ago. And that allowed me to really grow into the leader I am today. But I feel so called, so blessed to do this work. It's work with meaning every single day, and it's work with meaning that's actually able to capture and use all my skill sets from my financial training, from my studying of what it is in terms of philanthropic programs with evaluation, which is very important, and understanding how it is to be connected to donors. All of that really has just formed my ability and my platform here at American Humane Society, and now also Global Humane Society.
That's amazing. I want to ask you a bunch of questions around that. And one of the things that I'm curious is you
Mhm.
talked about, the history and the evolution going back to the Civil War and all of the um, challenges that sort of each era had and how American Humane Society has been there to be able to step in. And especially, by the way, I want to acknowledge, I really appreciate your point in the work that the organization has done around child rights, child welfare.
Mhm.
We just had on the podcast organization, Child Help, which is the largest child rights organization, runs the Child Help crisis hotline
Mhm.
um, around the country. So that is something that I'm super passionate about as a new father myself.
Mhm.
But coming back to each era having its own challenges,
Mhm.
what is facing the world right now? I mean, what would you want people to know? What are the plights? What are the challenges that are affecting animals, globally now? And then how can people, support your work and help contribute to make a difference?
So right now, as I look at the world, and I just returned from South Africa, as we were chatting about before our recording today, we work today in 91 countries. Can you imagine? 91 countries. Our work, our values have been exported. We've built our values in science and evidence-based practices. That's how we determine what it is to be humane, not just the emotion, Stephen. I know you
Hmm.
have a lot of emotion around your pets, right? I'm a cat mom and a dog mom and a horse mom and soon
Yeah.
to be a donkey mom.
Our,
And,
by the way, we have currently two German Shepherds,
mhm,
and they're really named after Charity Charge. Our older one, who's 3, his name is Charge,
mhm.
and our younger one, who's 1.5, is named Cash. So we kind of
Oh,
followed the whole theme there. But we are huge animal lovers, and I grew up with dogs and cats, and so
it's
yeah,
so wonderful.
definitely super passionate about
I
it.
I think companion animals make us all better humans. I wish everyone
Yes,
was raised with animals. I think the human race would be much better for it. That's for sure. But as
I
I look
agree.
at all these wonderful, animals and all, we drive all of our programs in solid science determined by those species experts, as well as veterinarians, behaviorists, and importantly, we have a chief ethicist. So that drives all of our program platforms and deliverables. And over the past few years, we've been able to take our value set and export those values in countries around the world who are really looking at how we act with animals in our lives. So what problems I'm seeing today is really are enormous, enormous. There is economic concerns when people are not doing well economically, when they experience inflation, when they have job losses. What happens is those animals get abandoned, right? Or
Hmm.
get left in shelters. We see a lot of that happening now with shelters, not just in our country, but indeed in other places around the world. Importantly, in places like Africa, where ecotourism drives the protection of wild species, if ecotourism is impacted, then that in turn impacts those communities that are there to protect those wild species. So, all of this goes around to how the world is doing economically, impacts the care of animals, believe it or not. And so, what we try to do is bring awareness that when there are challenges, that's when animals need us the most. And we really have to step up and provide those solutions, provide the care, provide for the interventions, but definitely make a difference. So we have proven set of solutions from certification programs that ensure that there are best practices out there, as well as direct on the ground rescue programs and intervention programs. We do both in terms of our whole set solutions for what it is to be humane. And again, it's been American Humane Society and now Global Humane Society, our international arm, that actually works to determine and define what is it to be humane. And that really crosses cultural barriers and boundaries. It crosses geographical barriers and boundaries. It crosses all lines. What it is to be humane is a universal value set that so many of us hold around the world. And I see our work at Global and American Humane as leading the charge in the compassion movement.
That's awesome. I want to ask you to go deeper there, Robin, with everything that you just shared there,
Mhm.
talking about some of the execution of it, because a lot of
Mhm.
our listeners, as we support over 3,000 nonprofits at Charity Charge, they're trying to understand how they can learn from people that are running organizations that are have a lot of experience and are doing things at a huge scale, and then how they can bring it down to kind of the boots on the ground approach that they have. And um, somewhere around 97% of all nonprofit organizations across the US are under $2 million in revenue.
I know.
So we have so many local organizations. So, as I've understood your model, but please correct me, obviously you have American Humane Society let's call it national, you have the Global Humane Society, but then in different regions, you'll have maybe the Baltimore Humane Society or the Austin Humane Society. Can you talk a little bit about the model of how you're interfacing, where you're taking these big picture strategies, visions, lessons learned, all of the research you're doing? How does that work to actually help out? Like if someone's listening to this and they're in whatever city they're in, um, and also they want to support your work, how does it happen actually on the sort of, I don't want to say even the local level, but like the actual direct response of like that animal being helped specifically?
So this is one of the greatest questions that I appreciate the opportunity to answer. We have 5,000 shelters around our incredible country and probably 9 to 10,000 rescue organizations. This is
Wow.
mostly for companion animals. Probably a few donkey rescue organizations might be in there too. But there's a large number of shelters and there's a large number of rescue groups doing great things for companion animals around our country. That tells you the need and the scope of this industry. Those local organizations, for the most part, are locally funded and locally championed. At American Humane Society, our business model is, of course, to support those groups through thought leadership, through allowing a call to action, allow some grant making to occur, certainly, to allow a standard setting body to be there to support their work. But at the end of the day, we're the only group in the world, period, that certifies animals in all different working environments. That's our area. We do not duplicate or replicate services. So as I talk to those groups that are under 2 million in annual revenue, please make sure that you are collaborating with groups and you're not duplicating or replicating other efforts on the ground locally, because that what that provides for is uh,
Can you say this louder?
can I say it louder and one more
Yeah.
time, right?
Yeah.
As I
I
talk
so
to,
appreciate the
yeah,
point that you're making. And
it's very
um,
honest, very honest. And because I've been in the space a really long time, Stephen, and I won't tell you the number of years, but my entire career has been in the nonprofit space or supporting the nonprofit space. I have a book about it called Mission Metamorphosis that came out during COVID. I have other books on animals, but the business part of it's Mission Metamorphosis. And I must say, if you have an organization that is constrained by resources under 2 million or so a year, please make sure you're not replicating services that are already provided in those local communities, because the dividing of those assets provides for lesser impact. And at the end of the day, in the nonprofit space, we are set up to be a business, number one. Number two, our product is social impact. Whatever space we're in, it's social impact. I actually count how many animals per hour, per minute, per year that we protect. Right now, we protect 1.7 billion animals per year. When you put that down per day, I've got a huge marching order. I couldn't do that if I didn't have the resource base to be able to get that job done at the level of excellence that we demand because the animals demand it. If you're in a local community and there are other groups trying to go after the same sort of social cause or impact, see if you can collaborate and join forces, because that's the best way to tackle these very important issues that our communities face. I encourage that. It's a best practice. Collaboration is really, really important, and making sure your resources are adequately used and responsibly used to have an outcome that needs to happen, because we need more nonprofits that are focused on meaningful impact.
yes, and really, I think there were many key things that you just delivered there, which really resonated with me and just warmed my heart because and the main thing that I think about is there is the actual social impact. I mean, what is the point? It's not about the organization and the ego and like this is my nonprofit and I founded it. It's the problem that you're trying to solve and being unattached from the vehicle that gets you to the outcome.
Mhm.
And what you're talking about is what needs to be shared
Mhm.
to infinity to be able to really, I believe, make a better and a vibrant world for everyone to live in. and get back to this concept of collaboration and get back to the idea of efficiency and getting dollars to actually make a huge impact. And I just, yeah, I see it so much that there's way too much overlap in the nonprofit world and not enough collaboration.
That's exactly right. And you use the word ego. There is a great deal of ego in terms of people's perspectives on how various problems can be solved. And I think that's brilliant that people have devoted their time and energy and their ego to solving those issues. What we do at American Humane Society and working with the various scientists and experts we have from around the world to get a job done and done well, we look at the program or the initiative, and afterwards, I have what I call an oil change. An oil change is rooted in the old book on tribal leadership, where we're all a tribe and we're different stages in our tribal development. But at the end of the day, we put our egos outside the door when we
Hmm.
come in to say, did we do this well? Did we not do this well? Nothing is left off the table. And as colleagues, we're able to address those issues and whether or not we had a success or what could have driven even a greater success. So egos have to be left outside the room to drive the social impact that we all need. And animals, by the way, they don't care.
Right.
They simply don't care. They need medical care. They might need to be rescued from a fire or a flood. They might be in a horrible a tourism operation where they're being abused. They might be in a wildlife situation where they're being poached. These are urgent matters. They don't care about our human egos. So I always say, let's about the animal. Let's remember those animals. That's what we're about.
I really appreciate that. To that end, I want to talk a little bit about um, your perspective on, I mean, for example, one of like the media aspects that we have here at Charity Charge is this podcast, which has been really great and it's been really fun for me. I do know that you are the executive producer and creator of multiple award-winning documentaries, Escape from Extinction.
Mhm.
Um, and I'm curious, can you talk to us a little bit about that? Because it sounds like,
Mhm.
Robin, I'm super impressed with you. Probably a lot of people are as well. I prior to this interview, I did not understand. And there were things I knew about you in doing the research, but when you were talking about was it Mission Metamorphosis,
Mhm. Yeah.
right? And your the financial side and kind of your understanding of that aspect of scaling and making an impact, that piece is so super awesome. But it sounds like you also really understand how to use media and how to use it as an education platform. So could you talk to us a little bit about the documentaries that you've been the creator and executive producer of, and then also how has that helped to create a novel way to spread about the work that you're doing and your passions?
Stephen, thank you so much because I love our movies. I
Yes,
love, love, love our movies. And by the way, the latest film, Escape from Extinction Rewilding, is narrated by Meryl Streep. You can get it as
so cool.
streaming globally, so you can get it on Amazon Prime or Tubi or any of those other streaming platforms. You can find Escape from Extinction Rewilding. The first film was just Escape from Extinction. My third one's in production now, Escape from Extinction Regenesis. And then we'll wrap up the EFE series, and I have a huge rescue documentary coming shortly thereafter on that. So I believe in storytelling to share the message, to share education, and to really make sure we're touching and reaching hearts and minds. And you can do that through producing op-eds, and you can be on podcast and all of this. But I think the power of a documentary gives you such credibility and substance, particularly if you invite some of the world's experts to be on those documentaries. And then, of course, you add the glamour of Hollywood with Helen Mirren being my first narrator and Meryl Streep being the second one. Then you have I think, a huge just X factor, an amplification of message like no other. And I believe in amplifying the message, particularly on the extinction crisis, because frankly, it's the most It's the number one issue I think we're facing today is the biodiversity crisis, because life on our planet in the next 20 years will not look the same, not due to AI, it's due to the biodiversity crisis. AI is another factor, but bottom line, the biodiversity crisis is so urgent. So I believe in telling those stories in digestible ways, and making sure we do so. So the first film that I produced came out, and I told my wonderful colleagues, we're going to produce a film and it's going to be a contender for the Oscars, because I believe when you do something, you should really do it big. And it sure was. It was shortlisted for the Oscars in the documentary, and we won multiple film festival awards around the world. And I'm very proud of my first film with Helen Mirren. And we talked about how zoos and aquariums are actually positive forces for change in the space of conservation. The second film, so proud of that because it's still in rotation, and it just won the Best Sustainability Award, Film Award in Bremen, Germany, over the weekend. So it just won another huge award, and it was also shortlisted for the Academy Awards. So we're very proud of our EFE series. But what we're trying to do, as these films are on airlines, American Airlines, Emirates Airlines, streaming channels, we're reaching a whole new audience who wouldn't normally tune in to read an op ed I wrote or to read a book I wrote, but they might be on a plane. They might be at home. They might have that popcorn or that bottle of wine, and they want to see something that's visually beautiful and learn. And so the documentaries are powerful tools for learning and sharing my message and my passion for this work. So I hope everyone will to look at Escape from Extinction Rewilding, and stay tuned for in 27 for Escape from Extinction Regenesis as we wrap up our biodiversity series.
That's amazing. I can't wait to watch it. It's I'm really appreciate you sharing that, Robin. My next question, which sort of I was thinking of as you were answering that, and I loved how you're always thinking about going big and how to really be the best, right? As you talked about, go and we're putting this out there to win the awards. I've interviewed a lot of people, on this podcast, and met a lot of folks, and I mean this to you with the highest compliment. You are a leader's leader. This brief interaction that I'm having with you, I'm seeing how you're playing at a really high level. You're doing amazing things with American Humane Society. It's now, branched out under your leadership to be a part of thinking even bigger global humane society. When you're talking about, I had said it about kind of the prospect of the podcast, which I'm proud of, but you're talking about Hollywood and how do we do it bigger in the documentary and go the awards and Oscars and all that type of stuff. As you reflect back, and I don't mean to put you on the spot, but I feel that everybody goes through transitions, right? As they're kind of leveling up. What was your big aha moment or breakthrough that got you to play at this really high level? To think big and to do big things.
Well, I so appreciate this question, because I don't know if there was one moment in my life that said, Robin, you're going to do something big or else, because I think I always knew I was going to do something big. And I just felt that this was the platform that needed that time and attention, and that really the amplification of message. And that's where I thought I could apply my talents, where I could apply my talents the best. But this cause that I have the privilege of running is so central to, I think, um, to humanity and to the human race. And in times like this, when we're looking for peace and hope, and love and connection, animals do that, right? Animals bring us that. And whether it's you're enjoying an animal in an aquarium or in your own home, or like your mother on safari, they bring us in such a connection to the earth. So I feel so fortunate. So my transformative moment would have actually been the day I was able to accept this job, right? And then I saw an organization that needed to be loved. This organization had not been loved for so long. And I took it very, this is what some leaders say, never take it personally because it's business. But the reality is it's not. It's who I am. It is my persona. It is me.
Tell me about that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's not, this is separate, blah, blah, blah. I don't buy that. I mean, when our organization has any attack by, a more extremist lined organization, it's
Yeah.
personal to me. And I'm
No,
thinking,
I feel that. We're set up as a public benefit corporation, but I came up with the idea for Charity Charge and bootstrap this. And
mhm,
this June, we're celebrating our official 10th year, in
congratulations.
operation, and all the battles that I've been through,
Mhm,
just starting a business to become profitable, to stay in business. Um, you know, uh, it almost in a weird way was like our first 5 years, although we were
mhm,
clawing at everything, it
mhm,
was almost kind of easier. And then now, I have a friend who's the matriarch of their family is really successful, in business. And her saying is, if you have something to take, people are going to try to take it. And
yeah.
so it's almost like these last 5 years, once we've started to achieve, success, it's
Mhm.
like it just has gotten harder and harder, and it's impossible not to take it personally. But I think it's why we've had the success and we will continue to, is because I am willing to march forward every day, and I love what you're sharing there. I think it's not business. It's how could it be?
Yeah,
And
how
that
could it be? That's exactly right. How could it be? And I think if it was just business, I wouldn't be here.
sure.
When it becomes just business and not your passion and your world, and it's not, if I'm not driving that, then I wouldn't be here anymore. It would not be a place for me if it becomes so corporatized in that way, even though
Yeah.
you have to have good business practices, which I'm a huge believer in, because you can't expand if you don't have the fiduciary practices in place. But bottom line, it's driven on this mission that has been, around 150 years.
It's amazing. And to stay in, for people that have been listening, following along, how can people support your organization?
Mhm.
Talk to us about the ways that the organization is able to, raise revenue. What are those different buckets for American Humane Society?
Oh, I love that question. First of all, you can learn more and even support our organization by visiting AmericanHumane.org, following us on Instagram at American Humane, at Global Humane. You can look at us both on LinkedIn, and of course, try to connect with me on LinkedIn. I'd love it. We can have sideline conversations as well. But you can really see our work in action through our social media channels, which I think is very important to stay up with, and also engage in our movie platform and our books. We have the Global Humane Table book coming out next year, as well as our movie, and then the following year, another super duper documentary on rescue. So there's lots of ways to engage with our work. As I think about this expansion that we've been through, I've learned a lot about doing business on the international stage. And that's where it's very, very important to always read the room and to understand cultures before you go in, and to do your best to assimilate and have such respect for other countries and doing business. And that's where I think you'll see me talking a lot about in the years to come, is as you expand internationally, what are those nuanced things you need to know, issues that you need to know so you can be grandly successful. And I have had a few tips in there that I think have really helped me be much more successful on international stages where many women are not welcomed. So I think that's very important.
That's amazing. Yeah, I'm really glad that you touched on that and everything that you shared on this episode. It's so fun. Robin, is there anything that you feel that we didn't cover that you'd like to get the word out, or share with our audience?
Mhm. Well, first of all, if you're running a charity, this is what I think is so important. Get out there, ask hard questions. Ask hard questions if you're making grants to other institutions. Ask them. Get to know what's really happening on the ground. You will learn so much by engaging with the people who not only benefit from your work, but people in the surrounding community. So get out there and figure out what's really happening, because your insights you learn from the ground will actually be the best that you need in making those tough boardroom decisions, particularly around resource allocations and the application of talent to solving an issue or having social impact occur. So I find that I need to be in the field. I was just in the field for a rescue program in Dallas. There was a meth house that blew up,
Mm,
and there was a hoarding case of so many dogs. in this terrible situation and the remains and the debris of a meth house.
Mm.
And we were in there, and I flew in there and went out there to rescue animals. And that was so important, to be on the ground, shoulder to shoulder with my rescue team, to show them that I was there and we were going to save animal lives that very day. Same thing in Africa, making hard decisions about expanding a biodiversity corridor. I'm there walking the ground, asking tough questions as to where our resources need to go, where we'll have the greatest impact, and what makes sense. So being there, actually engaging in the mission, and then being able to pull back and advise your colleagues and your board to make those very crucial decisions that need to be made in today's challenging times.
Thank you for sharing that. That last piece really resonates with me. And I would just say, as we close this out, and also for all the individuals that listen to the Charity Charge show, that has been both one of my passions, connecting and having conversations like this. Yourself definitely included, a leader of leaders, as I truly
Very
mean
good.
that in every sense of the word and the phrase. Um, but that's why I really enjoy doing the Charity Charge show, because we have our expense management, bookkeeping, accounting, gift card, compliance, all these different products and services for nonprofits. But the way that I'm able to learn the most and just understand is I've got to be engaged. And so I do that in different ways, but the podcast is just such a great way to understand
Mhm.
um, what's going on in the nonprofit world and how different organizations are thinking, being run, et cetera. So I totally echo your sentiment of be out there and learn from the people that you want to serve so you can make the best possible solutions for them. So yeah, thanks for the reminder of that. And I'll keep on that with this,
That's okay.
with the Charity Chart show and everything we do. Dr. Robin Gansert, thank you so much for being here on this episode. I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart. And for everyone that continues to listen, I tell you and remind you to charge it forward in everything you do in your life. Thank you, Robin.
Thank you, Stephen.